Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. I'm your host, Jeff Crowley, and I'm here with co-host Chris Hockenfels tonight. And we are going to talk about talking about sports. In this episode, we've got North Central Missouri's voice for sports, Tom Johnson, coming to you from, because he comes from all these places. And we're going to do a trip down 22 years of covering sports, Trenton sports, North Central Missouri college sports, and a much broader area, including Princeton, Milan, and other communities. Over the last 22 years, Tom has been on the site for all of those things.
Yeah, we are so blessed and fortunate to have a voice of North Central Missouri in Tom Johnson. He has been there for so many of the electric moments for Trenton and for NCMC, but also for Milan and Princeton and Polo and Gallatin and all the teams in the coverage area for KTTN and KGOZ. Tom's been there, and Tom's been there for the big games, for the not-so-big games, the championships, the state runs. He has probably put more miles on that little red KTTN van than anybody around, because he hops in that thing and does the games for the benefit of our community and for our kids and athletes. And so it's going to be a fun time talking to him and putting him on the other side of the microphone and getting to listen to him answer some questions about his experience and his journey through North Central Missouri and his time doing sports in this area.
I'm glad we've got him on our 26th episode so that our voices relative to a professional broadcaster will hold up better than we would have in those early episodes, you know.
You can definitely tell when you're talking with someone who has experience with a microphone, and I'm sure Tom will put off that energy for us and that vibe because he's an old pro. He's been doing it for a long time. And he's got quite a story where he started and what he has done for this area on the air and what he might do later.
That sets us up, and in just a moment, we'll have the one and only Tom Johnson in the studio. If there is a basketball, baseball, softball, or football game of note in North Central Missouri, Sports Program Director of Lures Broadcasting Tom Johnson is likely on the call. KTTN-FM, KTTN-AM, KGOZ 101.7 FM, are active in providing coverage for Trenton, Princeton, Milan sports, and other broadcasts for towns who rise up and compete in the MISHA Championship competition. Braymer, Green City, Stanberry, among others, have seen their community businesses jump on the opportunity to support their local school teams, get a broadcast that is listened to by the whole town and all the farms around it. It's a big part of high school sports. To get that kind of publicity and recognition, Tom's voice is the one that tells you this is a big game worthy of a quality broadcast. In addition to high school coverage throughout the area, Tom is the announcer for North Central Missouri men's and women's teams. As a Pirates broadcaster, he's had the opportunity to broadcast several district regional championship games as well as NJCAA National Tournament games. As the Pirates and Lady Pirates, program success has led to perennial involvement in the past 5 seasons. Doesn't stop there. 5 daily sports broadcasts, up to 8 news broadcasts, coaches shows, interviews with student athletes, UClick TV, announcing, adding other sports and broadcast. The man is a content creator, an announcing machine with over 22 years at KTTN and KGOZ. We welcome Minnesota native and Trenton transplant, Tom Johnson.
I like transplant. That sounds good. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Great. How are you, Tom?
Not bad. Not bad. Just making it through another afternoon. You make me sound like the busiest man in Trenton.
You might be the busiest man in Trenton and have been that way for 20 years or more.
He's busier than I am. I'll say that.
Well, I have the same system, I believe, that you're using to record this program. I'll just say that system is very busy Monday through Friday. Very busy. If you do hear my voice, though, you would be surprised how often a lot of people think everything they hear on the radio is live. Very, very little of it is live.
Well,
most of it's pre-recorded.
We count on that at podcast. And I also pointed out when someone said, where could they watch the podcast? I go, no. This is audio, fellas.
We 3 guys with faces for radio.
Faces for radio.
You guys speak for yourselves on that one, but I agree that it's a medium that you don't, let's just say it's not popular anymore as compared to the YouTube generation, the social media generation, the Instagram, TikTok generation. But in this area, it's been kind of a staple for North Missouri to have local radio and to have Tom Johnson on the call for the last 20 plus years for the high school and college here. So although it may be not as prevalent these days, it's still as important as it's ever been in our area, I think.
And we like to remind people, too, that in the 90s, before the internet, you listen to the radio, and if you're outside of the radio coverage area, you're out of luck. Now, with streaming audio, you can listen wherever you want, basically in the globe. As long as you can get internet access, you can listen to our station anywhere. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of followed the path of the snow day announcement. That's how I like to think of it. Like 25 years ago, to know that there was no school on a snow day, you had to get up
to the radio
and listen to the radio. That was it. You might be able to switch on a TV that might have it as a Kansas City and see it scroll across the bottom, but you had to get up, turn that radio on at 5:30 or 6 and just wait for them to come on. And now everything is just right there at the touch of your fingertips on every phone, or maybe you get a text or it's on an app. But yeah, it certainly has changed a lot over the last 25 years, which makes your job so remarkable that you've been able to, withstand all of that change and still put the content out there.
Well, I appreciate that. We do what we can. There's that give and take in radio of, it's with the old guard. Well, you'd like to have it the way it was in 1975. The new guard there are ways to expand, but yeah, there's a give and take there. There's a little bit of push and pull, but it's an interesting medium, certainly in 2025, no question.
We started this podcast and our age of listeners skews a little higher than most podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So we developed business cards, which is the antithesis of social media marketing. But literally people had to find us somehow. And it just cracks me up. People go, now, how would I be able to listen to that? And what time would it be on? I go, whenever you want it to be on, as many times as you want it to be on. It's just a totally different concept for people. And then I have a good friend who was in one of our broadcasts recently. And I go, have you listened to it yet? Yeah, I've been meaning to sit down. I go, you don't really have to sit down. You could be in your car. You could be on a tractor. You could be doing anything, So it does have accessibility, and there's good points to that. But people still don't know that they can do that.
It's just, it's getting people that are used to one certain type of technology used to another. It's doable, but you just got to kind of stay with them a little bit.
Yeah, I liked your point of that. There's still generations out there that when they listen to the radio, they think it's live because that's what's running through their head. Is he's talking right now into the microphone as I'm sitting here listening to him, and podcasts have changed all of that because it's very rare that you even have a live podcast. I mean, these podcasts are taped, they're messed with, they're edited, they're put out, so then people can consume them whenever they want to.
Yeah, and as I explain it to people, I think most people that listen to a radio station know that a 30-second commercial isn't given live by the announcer every 5 minutes. So just think when there is a 3.5-minute sportscast, which is on in the afternoon, or a 3-minute newscast, which is on in the afternoon, it's like a 3.5-minute advertisement or 3.5-minute advertisement, just with different information.
Good point, yeah.
All good stuff. Hey, we love to hear stories.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story-based and profile-based podcast. So we want you to share some of that stuff tonight. So there's some silly stuff that we mix in. And I'm going to start with the name of your high school.
Renshaw.
Renshaw.
Yes.
And the Renshaw
Wrens.
Okay.
Yes.
So I come from a aviary, a mascot as well, with the Lawson Cardinals.
Right.
And so I looked it up and I said, okay, when I do Fearless Forecaster sometimes, and I couldn't care less about the game, but I have to pick a winner, I say who would win if there was a fight between the mascots in the wild. So I looked up how a wren and a cardinal would fare, and it said that the cardinal was more territorial, a little more aggressive, would probably win that battle, but the wrens were very clever and very smart. So just thought I'd...
They like barns. That's all I know about. Yeah, the wrens like to hang out in barns.
So what was the logo of the wrens from Renshaw?
It was the logo that we had, and this is fairly new logo that I don't know who made it. New logos come out all the time. Very, very aggressive looking bird. It's orange and black. So I'm trying to think of what would be an orange and black color scheme in North Missouri. There aren't many.
Like Baltimore Orioles?
Yes, yes.
Gotcha. All right.
But yeah, just a very aggressive, mean-looking bird. You can take any sort of animal and make it look mean.
That they tried to do that with cardinals, and I just always found it. The cardinal's chest would be puffed out like he'd been lifting weights for a few months. I'm not sure I was buying it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was a cardinal.
I have never put two and two together on this, where I have a friend of mine who lives a diehard Kentucky Wildcat fan. And this is 2-3 years ago when I was in Lawson, I think probably covering Milan girls basketball, the districts. And I was texting him before the game, said, I'm kind of bored. I'm getting ready to go on with the game. And I said, yeah, can you guess, what town in Missouri this is? And it never occurred to me that the Lawson Cardinal logo at center court on their basketball court, if it's not the exact replica, it's 90% the Louisville Cardinal logo.
Yeah,
which is their big arch rival. So he wasn't good friend of me for the rest of the night. That looks like Louisville.
So, and Trenton, coming from a town that had some more obscure mascots, Trenton has, of course, the Bulldog mascot, which is there 7 within an hour and a half? So you've got to find a way to make a distinction between your Bulldog so that you get all these, like you said, mean-looking Bulldogs or Bulldogs posing a little different ways, because there's the South Harrison Bulldogs and Stanberry Bulldogs and the Brookfield Bulldogs. So I think it's kind of cool when you have the unique ones like the Wrens.
Mm-hmm.
I like that too. Now, I went on, and my mascots didn't really get that much more macho. I went to Central Missouri with mules.
I was a mule.
And then I went to UMKC, and I was a kangaroo.
The Ruse is kind of neat.
Ruse is great, but not tough.
Yeah.
Not a
I don't know,
tough.
have you ever seen a fighting kangaroo?
I have back in the day. Back in the day when the county fairs would have that kind of ridiculous.
You don't mess with a mad kangaroo. That's what I've heard.
No. They puff up their chest and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
Ready to go. Got the fists out.
Yeah, fist of fury.
And the cool thing I always liked about Central Missouri was that they had different for male and female. So they had the
Jennies.
mules and the jennies.
Yeah, that's good.
Very cool.
Well, you were an eagle then in
Yes.
college. So
Yes.
that is a significant bird.
Yeah, very much. Very much. I don't think it was a bald eagle necessarily, but yes, the mighty Eagles of Northwestern College at that point. It's now a university, but
Cool.
in the 90s, a college.
What was life like in Renshaw? You know, in northern areas, there's different sports, there's different things. What did you do when you
I
were
played,
a kid?
well, okay, so I'm not the tallest guy anyway. And in high school, I'm probably 110 pounds and 5'4" and 110 pounds soaking wet. I love playing basketball. I just couldn't handle the ball real well. I was a shooter. So I could shoot the ball well, but if you can't handle the ball and you have no size and not a lot of quickness, you're going to ride the bench. I played quite a bit of JV, I want to say my 10th and 11th grade years, but did a lot of riding of the bench. I think my claim to fame was I was a good enough shooter that I would be buried on the bench, but if there was a technical foul, head coach is looking toward the end of the bench to bring in Tom, and I'm going there and bringing 2 free throws and get me out of there within 10 seconds.
Hey, that's as you know, that's
There's value in that.
That's important.
Yeah. So I'm on the bench just hoping that the opposing coach has a little bit of anchor issues.
You know, a lot of them do. I've noticed that.
Yes, especially with the intensity of the ball game creeping in.
Goodness.
I'll give you a Renshaw/Trenton story you'll find interesting, though. So this is probably a couple of years after I had moved into town. We all remember Jim Horton.
Yes.
He has I don't know if it's a cabin or land. I'm going to guess it's land on Chubb Lake, which is just a little bit east of I-35, but probably 4 to 5 miles from Renshaw.
Okay.
So he knew exactly where that was.
The connections are there. You just got to find them.
Yeah.
And how far a drive is that?
8 hours.
8 hours.
8 hours. It's 2 hours north of the Twin Cities, basically. It's very close to I-35, so you're getting on the interstate that's very close to here and just heading north, but it's not going 50 miles, let's put it that way.
Well, I have family that have fished on Minnesota lakes for 60-some years and some of that kind of stuff. But I would suspect, and I've at least heard, that you're a pretty big hockey fan. I mean, was hockey part of growing up?
School was too small. Now, we had 2 rival schools. You know how schools are nowadays. You have little small schools that are co-oping with bigger schools. There's a community named Cloquet you guys might be familiar with. French trading town from the 1800s. It's on 35. It's basically, before you get to Duluth, your last city of size.
Okay.
So probably a little bit smaller than Kirksville. They've had a very good hockey program through the years, and our 2 rival schools that were smaller joined in with them as a co-op, but small little Renshaw never offered hockey. I never even learned how to ice skate, so that's
well, I mean, that makes
like
sense
watching,
because birds don't play hockey.
True.
I mean, so
does make
why
sense.
would they even try?
I did have arguably one of the best hockey teams in the state of Minnesota. If you look at high school sporting events, there are probably 3 sporting events that are head and shoulders in interest in attendance. That would be Indiana basketball, Texas football, Minnesota hockey. Where pretty well you're going to get sellout crowds. And I did have a cousin, I'm not sure the year he graduated, maybe 98, 97-ish, who was a starting forward on one of the best teams in the history of the state.
Cool.
North Minneapolis Metro School. So had a little bit of the advantage of a little bit of the suburban money, so to speak, but it doesn't hurt.
There's kind of a lot of commonality, though, between Minnesota and Missouri, both as Midwestern areas, more hockey things up north, but it just always seems like a lot of the media even moves back and forth between the two. There's podcast guys that cover the Chiefs that are Minnesota natives on the KC Sports Network. So there's some interplay where people move back and forth. I think Kevin Harlan did that for a while.
Yeah, Kevin Harlan, we can get into that story, but I remember hearing Kevin Harlan, who's one of the guys I looked up to broadcasting-wise. He was the original voice of the Timberwolves, who were an expansion team in 8-9. I remember listening to the first game they played in the Metrodome for the first year, and this guy is a great play-by-play announcer. Still working for the Chiefs, obviously, at that time, which I wasn't aware of, but yeah, I'm a big Kevin Harlan fan.
He's amazing. If he's calling a game, it's going to be well done if it goes down to the end.
Now he's calling Super Bowls on Westwood One, right?
Yeah.
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 And NBA and NCAA, and he's got it all, and he's got big games. And the cool thing is he is on radio a lot of times.
Yeah.
And he's on TV a lot too, but he has a radio call. So that's cool that he keeps that medium going.
There was one of those Cinderella games that he called, and he was holding back his crew, if you recall, when they do the video.
I believe Stan Van Gundy's was one of those, right, where he needs the airtime because he's going to describe what's going on without interruptions, so he's holding back his crew. That's a great scene, yeah.
If you're ever watching me, I say 99.9% of the time I'm just calling the game. I don't have a lot of histrionics or anything as far as body movements or whatnot. If you ever see me, if there's a big three-pointer and you know that if this goes in, it's going to be a big shot, I will lean with it like this, lean back, getting ready to. Most of the time when I do, that ball doesn't go in. I've noticed that over the years. So, yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that the way basketball is a momentum sport. If it's a big shot and it's going to, the proverbial blow the roof off the place.
I love that certain announcers do a good job of this. Some people set things up and you get the feeling that it was scripted. They had a call ready to lay into something. But the ones that just live in that moment, and then maybe they have an idea for a call, but then the right moment hits and they get it out there. Kevin Harlan's was Oh Baby for quite a while,
Right.
And then Dick Enberg was the Oh My.
Harlan also has the on the dunk, suck the oxygen out of the building.
Yeah, and Mike Breen's got the bang. He's pretty much got the copyright on that. But I also believe this, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I believe sportscasters, radio or TV, if they know a big game's coming up that they're going to be in, they practice or rehearse in their head or on paper what they're going to say at that moment. So some let it come naturally, but some have the line in their head ready to roll to when that moment comes because they've been waiting for that. For instance, a Ryan Lefevre for the Royals when in the World Series, he knows he's probably going to call the last out. Does he have that last out call ready to roll from his brain Rolodex, or does he want it to be spontaneous?
I'm not sure because I've talked to Ryan and Denny about this. Ryan had the final call of the 2015 World Series, and the game went extra innings. So they either go two innings, or one inning. You're going back and forth, so you don't know who.
So that's a good point. You don't know maybe with the extra inning if it's going to be the last.
Flip-flop in extra innings.
Yeah.
So, and if it would, I'm very certain that if it would have ended in the bottom of the ninth, Denny would have been on the call.
You think they're rock, paper, scissors back there? Come on, who's going to get the last call? Because it's going to be a famous last call that's played for decades.
Have you guys ever met Denny?
Yes, I met him at one of the speaking. He spoke at the chamber, one
of the nicest, most
great guy.
Very, very humble. Yeah, for a guy who's been doing it 60 years, is the voice of the Royals, and he's like, no. I asked him, was there any part of you that just with all the time you put into the Royals, you didn't get that? He said it was Ryan Zenning.
Yeah.
He said I was happy for him to get that opportunity. He's been here since the 90s.
So you and Ryan have a common theme too, because he started in Minnesota, correct? And he was at the University of Minnesota about the same time I was at Northwestern. Right, and he had a father that was a coach that I think he followed around. I don't know if he coached for the Twins or maybe played for the Twins or something.
I don't think Jim ever did. He played for the Dodgers.
Okay.
Against the Twins in '65 in the World Series. I do know that.
Did he coach at Seattle or something?
That sounds right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Small world.
The thing I like is that, and sometimes these things have different styles that carry different eras. And I've heard people gripe about Denny because he's kind of understated.
Right.
Gone. That's his word, for a home run.
And he's unapologetic. Yeah, that's his style.
But the way he does that and the import he gets into that, it has resonance to me. But some people want to, talk over things. And the best Denny is an irritated Denny. I mean, the best Denny is when the game is dragging down and the pitcher is fidgeting and cannot throw a strike. And Denny just goes off on that.
Right.
Now, some of Denny's stuff is kind of taken away by the pitch timer.
Pitch clock, yeah, because he doesn't have the time between.
There were the human rain delay kind of guys like Mike Hargrove.
What made Harry Carey a legend. He was pretty much a fan with a microphone for 60 years.
Right.
And if he didn't like what he was seeing, he's going to call him out.
Yeah. I
will give a shout out, and I'm sure you guys hear Royals on radio all the time, but Jake Eisenberg, plays physio, he's very good.
I think he's excellent.
I think Jake, for a young broadcaster, is excellent. I really like listening to Jake.
I think he's got that kind of foot forward enthusiasm, but he knows how to toss things to Denny and other people.
He's very smooth, yeah.
Just transitionally, he's really good, and he draws them in.
So not to get too into depth of the Royals broadcast team, but over the last 5 years, it seems like the Royals had this rotation of Physioc, Hudler, Lefevre, Denny Matthews. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he comes on the scene, and you're like, "Oh, who's this guy? He sounds really good."
Right.
And he's just done a great job. And I didn't see that really coming. You would thought it would have been one of those other guys would have got the full-time gig or whatever. But yeah, he's done a great job.
And he replaced Physioc. And I like Physioc's been everywhere before he retired. He was in Southern California for years and years. And so, Kansas City has had very good broadcasts over the years, even going back to Fred White.
Yeah. Fred White, did he get the final call of the 85 series?
That I don't know. I think Denny was on the mic for that.
I think Denny was too, because it's the no outs. It's the no outs to go.
Yep.
Right.
Which I'm sure if you give Denny some truth serum, and he might have even admitted this to me, when it's 11-0 for the last 5 innings of Game 7 of the World Series, you are preparing for what you're going to say on the final out.
Yeah, right. You've scribbled it down.
If ever you're going to set for something that you've never done in your life, that would be the opportunity.
Do you find yourself, when you are calling games, high school and small college, do you find yourself listening to those and then saying, hey, I think I'm going to model myself a little bit after how they do this or how they do that? Or do you see it more like they're on the highest stage, so I got to make it a little bit different because I'm doing local high school and local small college?
I do not look at it that way. I look at it as if I'm doing a Trenton high school game, it's every bit as important to Grandma Jones listening in Jonesboro, Arkansas, than it would be to diehard Knicks fan Bob listening to Kevin Harlan.
Great.
There's no difference.
Answer.
Sports is sports at the end of the day.
Right. That's right.
I think that's great, and that comes through, I believe. And it just seems to me that I've heard a lot of people say that they don't listen to other people because they want to have their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tucker talked about that when we had Tucker Franklin on. So I don't try to model myself after something because I got to be genuine.
Yeah, I haven't ever taken time to write down, I'm going to do this call here. Most of what I do is naturally, and I'll have a story here at some point with the game against Southeast that the Lady Bulldogs won 8 years ago. There's a little story there that I didn't necessarily have the call, but I had an idea off of one of my broadcasting heroes that played into that.
I think I know a little bit about that.
Yeah,
we'll tee that one up. So
at some point we'll get to it.
That honors the legacy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're into. When you see history being made in front of you and you can kind of echo something that looks backward a little bit at the same time, it's a cool moment. Moment.
I think also when you think about the professional top level, the Mike Breen right now in the playoffs or Kevin Harlan, they've got assistants, they've got prep work, they've got research, they've got people there doing stats and stuff. Tom Johnson has just recorded a newscast. He's just done the weather. Now he's got to pack a bag real quick and drive to Milan in the red machine and get off and get hooked up and start calling a basketball game. It's different. And so sometimes you think, well, the more pressure is really on Tom Johnson than it is Kevin Harlan because he's got to do this as his day job. And then he's got to out the door, go call a game that's got maybe 10 kids that he hasn't even looked at the roster till he gets there. There's no prep time. But again, when you're the voice of the GRC, when you've done so many, you start to know those kids and those coaches, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll use last night as an example. We're kind of waiting for the Trenton program to improve to the point to say, okay, we can put Trenton on and they're not going to lose most games 18-0 in 3 innings or things like that. And the Bulldogs have improved a lot. So we got them and we've got into the GRC kind of following that race. We'll still have Princeton. So go to Brookfield and did Princeton Brookfield last night. And it was warm and there was not a press box. And most other places, you're going to have a press box. You're going to have stats that are sitting there waiting for you. I had a pen. I had a scorebook. I had a hat on. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I would have been burnt. And then you just roll with it.
Yeah, and that's something new, right? Because baseball in the GRC is kind of a new sport.
I would say 10 years ago, not many area schools had baseball.
Right, and so we've always had the basketball and football in this area of the state. And people expect that, but to know that you're doing baseball now is pretty cool.
Football is a whole different animal, too, as far as the fall goes. And I know you're aware of this, too. When you have one game in the biggest high school sport there is in this country, it's not as if there's a varsity game on Monday and maybe one on Thursday, and then you got the big game on Friday. There's one game, and there's 9 of them in the regular season. These are big games that people in these communities get fired up for, so...
And everybody knows that it's 7 o'clock Friday nights. Another good thing they do, it's the NFL model. Right? Everybody knows at noon on Sunday. You've been waiting all week. Of course, the
Unless
NFL.
You're the Chiefs.
Well, the NFL plays, I know, on every night of the week now. It's crazy. But the model has been, they've got Sundays at noon and at 3. Missouri, it's Friday night 7. There's going to be a football game on, and your town's going to be playing.
And it's not stressful per se. Now, Fridays are stressful, don't get me wrong. But it's I have all of this to get done, and this is my deadline. So not Fridays in the fall, but the weeks in the fall are a whole different piece because everything just rolls right to that 7 o'clock Friday night with whatever you're doing the whole week. You know that deadline is coming up.
And you've got girls' sports that you're also dealing with during the week. Mm-hmm. And then trying to wrap all of those up and do those interviews so you can play that at halftime or pregame of Friday night.
And not just Trenton's obviously been very good in softball, but Trenton has 4 girls sports.
Right. You've got tennis to talk about and golf to talk about and volleyball to talk about. Yeah.
It helps though. When you have 10 minutes in the can, use a radio term there for halftime. You don't need to talk for 10 minutes at halftime. That's a good feeling.
Yeah. Right. You can kind of catch your breath and get a Diet Coke and a hot dog and get ready for the second half.
Yeah, go talk with the crew over in the press box and say, what'd you guys think of that first half?
I've just visually can imagine when you walk into a gym, nothing guarantees that you're going to get a spot or the spot. There might be a mom videotaping with her tripod set up that you've got a bouncer from her spot. You get there and you don't know what you're going to see.
I enjoy going to gyms I've never been in before. So we got a little bit into the Bethany community this year and got into South Harrison, and they had a very good girls basketball team this year. Excellent girls basketball team. Loved watching them play. They went to Mid-Buchanan. I had never done a football game, let alone a basketball game at Mid-Buchanan, so I'm over in Fawcett in March, and I love going. There is a part of you that says, I just hope this gym is conducive to what I want to do. But yeah, there's something that's fun about going someplace basically in your area, although Mid-Buchanan isn't. It's still in the KCI and basically an area school. So that was enjoyable, even though South Harrison lost, and it is what it is. But
out in the middle of nowhere. Now, there's always a story with a gym, right? Mid-Buchanan is a gym that was built facing one direction. Did you know this? And then they end up flipping that.
Really?
And when they did some renovations, and so if say the gym was running north-south, then they flipped it so it runs east-west. And so it now sits in the same location, but runs a different way.
All I remember was getting out of that gym that night, and it was one of those nights where we had a cold front that was right on the edge of St. Joe, and it went through it during the game. So before the game, the wind was blowing at 20 miles an hour. After the game, it was blowing at 60 miles an hour.
Man.
It was one of those March weather nights in Missouri.
Well, I'll tell this story, and I played at Mid-Buchanan, the old gym, and so you dressed underneath the gym, like a 7-foot ceiling.
Like Milan's old gym. Yeah, right.
And we were playing a team that had lost more than 70 straight games. Okay. We're coming down to the end and they're up 1. We're like, oh my gosh, we can't lose to them. And some kid accidentally, I think, or maybe on purpose, sprays his water bottle on the referee's foot, and he gets teed up, and we hit the tees and go into overtime. We blitz him in overtime. We win by like 12 in the overtime. And my uncle was our coach, and he collapsed on this old couch that was in there. And somebody gave him a hard candy, and he was just like catatonic, like he couldn't believe he was going to get in the Kansas City paper for blowing the 80-game losing streak game. And my buddy walks up to me and goes, "Coach, we had it all the way."
Yeah,
right. That kind of thing.
You mentioned the Milan gym. Have you ever been in the cafeteria in Milan where you can kind of see where the old gym from the 40s and 50s would have been? Very unique. You sit. That's usually where they have during the Milan tournament the hospitality room,
right?
And you just can't envision because you can kind of see where the second level and the overhang would have been, and go, "This is tiny. There, you can't play in this gym, some way somehow."
Yeah.
I'm with you, though. I love traveling and going to see all the different gyms because for the most part, especially with the ones that were built in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there was character and there was some quirk about a gym or something that makes it unique. Now, a lot of times they are put up and it's just four walls and concrete and let's go.
I would have loved to have done a game in Trenton High School prior to the new building. So where Adams is.
Yeah.
Just a time machine, just being able to see what the broadcast setup was in, say, 1963 would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It was kind of odd to explain, but down sunken lower level with bleachers above.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
you get some sounds you don't get anymore. Those metal backboard, kaboom, the way it would hit those metal backboards.
Well, and speaking of sounds on your broadcast, you guys want to guess the number one comment I get from people when I sit down to do a broadcast?
No.
Either I am too close or my husband / wife is too close. I am not well behaved during a game. I can't be this close to the radio.
Well, will you pick me up screaming at the official?
Yeah.
I don't want people to know.
And I got to go during our broadcasts, especially if it's districts. We have the 5 different rotating Misha ads begging for good sportsmanship. They said this is not going well.
So I know the old trick too, because I've been a part of a broadcast team in high school. Is sometimes you get a mic and you lower it down. If you're high, you lower it down so you can pick up crowd noise just for the broadcast, so people can kind of get that ambiance of the. And if you lower it to the wrong section or the wrong person, you kind of bring it back up and re-lower it somebody.
My first radio job in KMZA, which was in Hiawatha in Seneca, Kansas. Folks probably recognize those towns because they're on 36 west of St. Joe, not very far.
Right.
And this is where I knew how to set up the stuff, but wasn't necessarily sure how all this, funky equipment that I'm setting up 2 months into the job necessarily works. But I had taken a crowd mic and I had put it 100, 200 feet to the corner of the football field to get random noise from underneath the crowd, as I has been told. Well, little Johnny, who is 8 years old, decided to go over there and say, "What's this?" And I didn't have any ability to turn.
You're too far away.
I was too far away from my microphone to get it turned off.
So whatever he said, we're just going to roll
with.
We'll
be right back after this 2-minute commercial messages of great importance.
While I run across the field and try to get him off the mic.
Yeah. And I learned a valuable lesson. Always, always, always be within striking distance of your broadcast equipment. If you need to hit that off button, it needs to be hit now.
That's good. Good point. Good point. Okay, so you started at Hiawatha, and what kind of variety of things did you do there? Talk about that and how it prepped you and what brought you to Trenton.
I wasn't the sports director. I was kind of the number. There were 2 stations there, so I had a sports director who had graduated from K-State about 5 or 6 years prior, was very, very, very good. He was sports director. We had a smaller station in Seneca. I did most of the games for that station. Added a station in Falls City, Nebraska in 1999. Station in Atchison was also on our network, so we had 4 or 5 stations. But generally, I stayed in Hiawatha and or Seneca, moved to the sports director position. Had to leave in 2002, and I'll just give a little notice to anybody who's young in any sort of business and you're away from home and you get homesick. My first brother to get married got married in, I want to say 2000, probably. Got homesick and just thought, okay, Hiawatha, Kansas is no longer for me. I'm going to find a job in Minnesota. I really want a job in Minnesota. The boss there took it as, "You're leaving." Yeah. I kept my job for 10 months, and they got rid of me the next July, which is how I ended up in Trenton in 2002.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to
Yeah.
when you're young.
Yeah. So 26, 27, you learn valuable lessons, but don't be surprised if the way you're thinking doesn't necessarily correspond with the way that your superior is also thinking.
Yep.
But good for Trenton because you ended up in Trenton.
I did that out here. Yeah. First day was August 1st, 2002.
August 1st, 2002. And the up-and-coming young coach for girls basketball that got his first head coaching job wasn't Trenton High School was in 2002.
You were younger then, huh?
Yeah, I was a little bit younger then. Although I had the head softball coaching job for a couple of years at that point, but didn't move to the head basketball till 2000, the 2001-2002 season, I believe.
Well, as I was introduced that was the only Rotary Club meeting I've been at was that week in Trenton. And I was introduced by John as most of the Rotary people are NCMC people.
Yeah,
This is
true.
going to be the voice of the Pirates for however long he's going to be here. And lo and behold,
Here we are.
23 years later, I'm still voice of the Pirates.
Yeah.
So it worked out okay.
That's excellent. Now, okay, so that was the cornerstone piece. What other things were you doing? You didn't start doing football until when?
The first, I got hired about Christmas time, 98 in Kansas. So my first game I remember doing, I'm pretty sure this is the first game. It was B&B, which is Baileyville St. Benedict, which I don't think those schools are still, I think they've been absorbed into Seneca.
They closed down because that's just too hard a name to repeat.
Yes.
So they're like, forget it.
They were the B, and it was so much easier to just say B&B.
Yeah.
But they're officially B&B Baileyville. So it was them and Centralia. Now, Centralia, Kansas, do you know the NFL Hall of Famer from Centralia?
From Centralia,
I go to do a B&B Centralia game, and these are two top 5 teams.
Gail Sayers.
No,
Oh.
John Riggins.
Oh, hey, running back.
I turn right to go to the high school, and there is John Riggins Avenue, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is pretty big time, John Riggins Avenue.
Right.
They played either in 98 or 99, and keep in mind, these are two rivals in the same league, 10 miles apart, and they play for the girls' state championship in Kansas, out in Hayes, Kansas. I think it was 99, so I don't think it was 98. It would have been the year after that. The point guard for Centralia ended up at Texas Tech, started at Cloud County, so she was Division I. There were 2 players for B&B that ended up at Fort Hayes. So I just thought, this is the level of athletes that I'm going to just see for my entire career. Division I here, Division II here and there.
That's a little more rare than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a blessing when you get those opportunities. Now, when you came to KTTN, you were doing Pirates. You took over football in what year?
I was doing football for we still do to this day pretty well a Princeton Milan combination on KTTN.
Yeah.
We put Trenton Football in the 90s on KGOZ because the tower is a little bit southwest of Trenton. It reaches a little bit more to those Hamiltons and Lathrops and whatnot. And Trenton played a lot of those teams back in the day because they had a non-conference schedule, independent. So that was the reason for that. So for 5, 6, 7 years, I did pretty much, it was either a Princeton game or a Milan game. And Princeton had some pretty good teams in the early 2000s. Including one that made the state championship game, and the year before made the state semifinals.
I recall that Princeton Milan dynamic was cool, that because you had multiple stations, you had a lot of live football and choices.
And you could pick the better of the matchups.
Yeah.
The one that kind of you feel would get the juices running on the listening audience a little bit more.
So when you started doing Trenton football, we've had a lot of people talk about C.F. Russell Stadium and the kind of the allure and the charm of that, the nostalgia of it, the covered stadium and stuff. I mean, maybe it's a different perspective when you climb up that ladder up into the press box, but what were your feelings when you started taking on that?
Well, I took over for a Bulldog. I took over for Steve Hudson, so I was nervous my first game because I knew that Steve Hudson was a beloved Bulldog, and so I'm taking over for him in a job that I know in this town. Trenton is prominent. Yeah, Trenton is at heart a football town, as I've been told many, many times. So the nerves were flying, but the minute that you get up there, I'm not the biggest fan of going up that ladder and down the ladder. Just not a fan of heights, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But once you get up there, there's not a better view in North Missouri on a Friday night.
Tom, tell us about taking that old standalone antenna and having to set it out there on the roof of CF Russell, plug it in before the days of cell phones. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Because I carried that antenna up for 8 years working with Steve up those stairs and thought there has got to be a better way than that old tripod antenna we used to set out there.
It's called Marty technology, where you have one antenna that you plug into our big Marty box, and that antenna you aim out to the east side of town here, and it hits there, and then it sends the signal back to the station. It's a little bit staticky, but it works. Now we use IP addresses, and it is beautiful.
But I used to have nightmares about that antenna until I was AD and was able to put new stairs in at CF Russell, because you probably also remember the pull-down attic-style stairs that we used to have to go up there.
My nightmares are not going up the stairs. Going up the stairs is not my favorite thing. It's walking to the edge to go down the stairs I do not like. I can do it, but I don't like it. I'll have nightmares Thursday night before a big home game just because of that walk.
But also a great view, and I'll have to agree with Tom there that when you get up there and it's Friday night in the fall and it's about 68 degrees and the sun's going down at CF Russell and you're in the press box, you can hear the crowd underneath you starting to move the roof a little bit, and the roof's kind of moving. It's so special.
There's not. I did games at Hamilton when Hamilton made their run to the state final. Hamilton is very similar to Trenton, but you're higher up and it's harder to get that good crowd noise. All you have to do at Trenton is just plug a random microphone into one of your spots and you turn it up about 50% of the way. If I'm at 90%, you turn that up 50%, and I'll tell the cheerleaders, you cheer as loud as you can. I'd tell the people at the stadium too, because you can't beat that crowd noise behind a big call. If you don't have a microphone hanging over that ledge, you might as well just be in your bedroom making that call. You can't really hear the crowd. So yeah, the crowd makes.
And so something about CF Russell too that gets overlooked, I think that people don't think about, is the normal high school stadium stair steps away from the field. So the higher you get up at a stadium, so say it's got 20 rows of bleachers, that's 20 stair steps away from the field, and then you've got the press box and you're up. CF Russell has the covered where the press box is pushed all the way towards what would be the first row of the bleachers, which is right on the track, which is only 25 feet from the playing surface. So when you're up there, you're pushed all the way forward, and it's almost like you could reach out and touch the field. Whereas if you're at, say, Brookfield at Burlington or whatever, and you're way further away, and it doesn't seem like it'd make that much difference, but it makes a huge difference.
And it is harder. I love Brookfield. Brookfield is one of my favorite old time football, but it is much more difficult to get that good crowd noise. The problem with getting crowd noise is you're trying to get noise, but you're not trying to get individual conversations.
Right, yeah.
I run into that in Milan. You can hang your microphone about halfway down to the sidewalk on the back of Milan's bleachers. If it's too low, you're hearing Bob and Joan having what they're going to have for dinner after the game, and nobody wants to hear that. You want to hear cheers on a good play.
Right. Good stuff. Love it.
Small towns. Small towns.
The inside of what makes a good radio broadcast.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so you guys have this crossover, and that in 2004, 2005, the Lady Bulldog basketball team was making a big run, coached by my co-host, Chris Ockenfels. They had a blazing start to the season. They got up to 11-0 at one point, and they were playing in the Penn Valley Holiday Tournament in December 2004. And I remember listening to that game on the radio. And tell me what that was like. In the game against O'Hara, it ended with a shot with 3.2 seconds left.
Adding to that, and I know you guys are well aware of this, if you talk to Jeremy Esri will tell you this, Jenny will tell you this. It's a little bit different because the program has struggled in the last 5-10 years. When I took the job, NCMC in Penn Valley was a blood war. They didn't like us. We didn't like them. We especially didn't like going down to that gym because we felt like if we get out of here with a victory, we're going to get lucky. And if we have a chance to win, the referees are going to get us anyway. So it is what it is. So little old Trenton High School going down there and playing at big old Penn Valley in the city was just a cool thing.
And it was to set up a little bit more to it. It was just one of those things that if you threw a dart at the wall, it would only stick one time in one spot that we would get to play in that because the NCMC Holiday Hoops was supposed to start that year, or at least we thought it was. Well, it kind of got delayed a year and didn't start till the following year. Well, we had already got out of a tournament anticipating that we were going to be in the NCMC Holiday Hoops. So now we're with no tournament. What are we going to do? Holiday tournament. I start just looking around for holiday tournaments, come across that one. Penn Valley's going to have one, which is like going into the Lion's Den. Like you said, but we knew of it. We had heard of it. But the teams in the tournament were city teams, all bigger than us. But we thought at that point we're going to have a pretty good team. So I asked my AD, hey, I found this tournament. It's a 1-year stopgap till we get it NCMC. Can we go? It's during the holidays. Well, okay, let's try to make it work. Well, it was played on 3 consecutive days, no rest. And so we had to get rooms down. So this whole thing turns into just an experience instead of just a tournament. We're taking a group down there. We're staying on the plaza. We're playing at Penn Valley. We've got Tom down there and James Arnold as a special play-by-play and color guy duo on the sidelines. And it just turned into the surreal experience. And then I'll let Tom talk about that last game.
I'm trying to remember. I know you guys probably remember Tiara Johnson.
Tiara Johnson played for Westport.
Yes, I was going to say,
upset.
I believe, I don't know if it was James first was made aware of Tiara, but I would consider Tiara one of the most important recruits NCMC has ever had. Because she took that Amber Van Devender team that finished 6th, if I remember, in 2007. She just gave them a different vibe.
Yeah, and she was, if I remember this right, and we'd probably have to get James Arnold on the podcast to confirm, but he went down there to look at the post player on Westport. Now, she also played at NCMC. But I can't remember her name at the moment. And then ran across watching Tiara play and was like, oh, man, I've already got Amber that I think I'm going to sign, but this is another point guard, but would they be good together? They end up being great together. And that all came from that tournament, yeah.
Yeah, so I've done so many games from that gym. And usually I'm seated between the team I'm broadcasting for, which is always interesting when you're that close to coach. Because coach is like, I'm going to get a technical, I'm going to be on the radio, it's going to be horrible. So you're sitting basically with the team and the coach on your left, and then the scores table on your right, and they just give you a little table. And I don't remember James, but now that you mentioned, yeah, James would have been on that broadcast. I just remember, it's the only thing out of 3 games I remember. Looking down into the corner, and I believe it was a buzzer beater, and out of nowhere, Sheena gets this ball and fires it, and it's nothing but net. To tie it?
To win it.
Okay, to win it.
So we were down 14 going into the 4th quarter against O'Hara, who had a Division I Mizzou athlete. She ended up being a track and field athlete throwing the hammer, Kirshna Lee, and they're beating us by 14 going into the 4th, and we start to rally in the 4th, come back. Sheena hits 2 or 3 threes, Amber hits some threes, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves down 5 with under a minute to go. We come down, we run a play, Sheena hits a 3, now we're down 2. We foul, we come down, they miss. We get the rebound, we come down, time's winding down. Amber drives the lane at the buzzer and hits a left-handed scoop shot at the buzzer to tie it. So now we're going into overtime. And then it's back and forth in overtime, and it's tied, coming down with under 10 seconds to go. And we had a play that we always ran in that type of situation. It was called 4. Amber was supposed to drive and get girls to come on her in the middle of the lane, and then Sheena and our other guard, Ashton, were supposed to flare to the open spot. It just worked. I mean, Sheena's girl kind of came off of her just for a second, enough for Amber to pitch it out to the corner, and Sheena was coming up and hit the 3 right at the buzzer, or a second or 2 shy of the buzzer. Yeah, I've got that call from Tom Johnson.
It was one of those calls too. I remember you have this feeling of, I don't think this is going to happen. How we're going to get a 3, we'll see. And then you have that, oh my gosh, it went in, it swished. what did I just see? And as a play-by-play broadcaster, that's where nothing is planned at that point. You're just letting it fly.
Letting it fly because everything's happened
cool
in that
moment.
game.
Yeah, because you didn't think that whole game that there's no way we're beating big old O'Hara. It's not happening. We're playing well, and somehow we're in this game. It's not okay. And then Sheena hits a 3.
Yep.
With a hand in her face, too. I want to say she got the ball over the hand of the defender, maybe me to you.
Right, because the defender came to help and then realized the ball got kicked out and went back and got that hand up. Yeah.
I remember in the broadcast, it was like there's these spikes in sound because the chaos and the noise in the gym, and what just happened? I mean, you hear a cheer and you're like, is that our crowd cheering? And,
Have you ever been to that gym?
No.
The noise ricochets in there. Yeah, it's an older gym, but it's an older suburban gym, if that makes sense. So like older country gyms are going to be kind of the wooden shacks, barns and things like that. This is older, but it's that 1950s, 60s sort of suburban gym feel.
All the seats on one side.
Yeah.
Kind of like our gym at Trenton. So all the team stuff and the scores tables on one side, and then the other side's the gym. So the two opposing teams are sitting next to each other. So no matter what happens either way, there's going to be loud noises coming right from the crowd.
It's a good memory, but I was thinking about that one because I know that's probably on the top of your list of exciting coaching moments, and I remember so little from that experience other than Sheena's shot.
Yeah. We had beat Westport, was the 1 seed, and we had upset them in overtime. So we played back-to-back overtimes on back-to-back days to win that title, to get us to 14-0, I believe. And then I think we lost our next game at Marceline, and then came back and beat Chillicothe at Chillicothe.
I had forgot, too, that was the last year before Holiday Hoops got rolling.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, so I want to get the lowdown on some things before we get into even more recent years and successful teams that you've covered. So, hands down, what's the best football game you ever broadcast?
The best football game. You know what? The first one I thought of, I don't know if it was the best. There was and they're pretty good rivals, and both these communities know their rivals. I'm not sure how many people outside these communities know their rivals. Those good Princeton teams that I had early in the 2000s, and South Harrison, probably coached by Wes Croy, if I had to remember. And I would guess on names, and I might be wrong, but there was a pick 6 in a 10-7 game. I might be wrong on these specifics in the fourth quarter at Bethany, and Princeton got a huge victory. And obviously, that's a little bit of your Princeton's a little bit smaller school, South Harrison a little bit bigger school, so there's that dynamic too. The smaller school wins, but that was a good one. I'll give you one Trenton game too, because whenever I run into Lathan, I actually ran into Polo's coach at a Polo baseball game last week, where I'm not sure how Trenton won this game, but I want to say it was 36-34, and I think Lathan hit Hunter Dugan with a touchdown with about 2 seconds left. A game that we couldn't stop Polo's running attack for anything. And Polo just had one mistake in the fourth quarter, fumbled, and we got the ball, and somehow, some way, won by 2. Amazing game. I don't know if it's the best, but it's certainly one that comes to mind.
Okay, I'm going to load up something. And one of the cool things I think about broadcasting and what you do, Tom, is that there are great moments, even in teams that aren't having great seasons, and maybe even a game that is lagging a little bit. But every now and then, there's something that happens that gets your juices flowing, and this is a Trenton football.
From the pistol, here's Maverick Gentry. Looks left, throws toward the goal line, knocked down and intercepted by Novak. He gets a return out to the 10, sprints down the near sideline to the 20, 30, 40, midfield. He might go to the 40, 35, 20, 10, 5. What a play for Dave Novak. Touchdown, the Bulldogs. An interception by Gabe Novak, making a one-handed juggling interception 2 yards deep in the end zone. He returns it 102 yards for a Trenton touchdown at the end of the first half.
2 years ago, not long ago.
Not long ago.
You know that the old broadcaster is really excited when the voice cracks.
I was going to say, when you went into that
when
range,
the voice cracks,
you were like Billy Joel singing one of those old-fashioned songs.
I'm calling the game. Well, that was just that was a good moment in broadcasting right there. And the what?
But the emotion of it, and that's what makes it so great, is you're invested in it because you've been here and you know the team and you know the kids. You know that was a big moment for those kids.
It's the last play of the first half. The last thing you're thinking is 102-yard pick 6 down the side, and it's going right down the near sideline, so it's right in front of the students.
And a game-altering play because, right, you think that the team with all the momentum is going to be the team that goes in and scores here.
We had struggled against Polo.
And they're knocking on the door, and then all that changes with a pick 6 all the way the other way.
And when we talk about sports and small-town sports, it's those moments and the relationships that people have. I mean, they remember that stuff, Yeah. What was our record that year? I don't know what our record was. I remember that polo game. I remember this play.
That's where I want to go. Trenton wasn't bad that year, but they weren't 9-0. Probably 6-3 if I had to guess, but yeah.
It's exciting. And there are certain iconic kind of plays, 102-yard interception return. And when you get to call those yard markers and all that kind of stuff.
You guys remember that play too, because Gabe, who's one of the best athletes Trenton's had since 2010 easily, he bobbles the ball. He has the ball in his hands, but you're sitting there calling it saying, well, he's bobbling it. He's certainly going to find a way to drop it because, he's not going to pick it off here. And he bobbles it and he gets it against his shoulder and gets it controlled. And there he goes.
I love it. Love it. Okay. So best basketball game.
The best or the most significant?
Both. I want to hear both.
I will say the most significant game was against Southeast.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's just different when it's the town you live in. For the Trenton girls, and I thought it was a big deal for them to break the district hex that year.
Against Lathrop.
Yes.
At Lathrop.
But we were better than Lathrop. They gave us difficulty, but we were better than them, but we were so young. That was the thing with that team. We had Whitley and a bunch of sophomores running around who were very good, but finding a way, and that was, you guys have heard the term a rock fight when the game isn't that pretty and the points are tough to come by. The prettiest rock fight I've ever seen. What was it, 34-33?
33-31?
That sounds right.
We might just have something about that. What do you, Jeff?
Hurley to Tolson, left corner, now to Richmond. Inside to Lynch for the layup. Great pass from the elbow from Richmond to Lynch for the deuce.
You're getting there.
To the head of the key, 3-ball, good.
Now, before we get deep into this.
Yeah, I feel like we're moving forward on this playoff push.
My point is that this call is pretty significant, and we'll let it play out, and then we'll kind of double back to this idea that we've talked about calls.
Big shot by Ainsley Tolson, who has 8.5, 11 in the game. Catches, shoots, scores. Ashton Whitaker off the 2-on-1 break gives Trenton the lead at 18-17. The ball goes Hurley to Tolson. Baseline, Whitaker, jumper by Ashton. Good from the left baseline. Ashton Whitaker pours it in. She doubles her points, total to 4, and Trenton's lead is 10. Trenton will get the ball inbounds to Whitaker. Whitaker hands it off to Hurley. Hurley underneath the hoop. Now to Whitaker. Cross court. Trenton goes to Columbia. Trenton goes to Columbia. The Lady Bulldogs of Trenton High School have beaten Kansas City Southeast 33-31. Make that road black and gold.
Make that road black and gold. I think I've heard this one before.
Yeah, so one of my broadcasting heroes was Ray Christensen, who was the voice of the Golden Gophers for, I would say, easily 50 years, probably 60. And he, much like me, just bigger station, worked at WCCO, which is the big 50,000-watt juggernaut in Minneapolis. He would cover severe weather. He'd cover news. He was voice of the Gophers from the mid-40s until he passed away in like 2010. The Gophers have made one Final Four, 1997. They're in San Antonio. It's the only time I have ever been in their arena. I'm living in Minneapolis at the time. They win. They go to the Final Four. I go down to Williams Arena as they come back, and they had the place stuffed for a welcome home ceremony. But his call, the road to Indianapolis is now paved with gold.
I think we've got that call.
Do you really?
Yep.
The road to Indianapolis is now ready. It is paved with gold.
That is, I didn't plan it that way until it happened, and it just came out that way.
I love it. I love it because it answers so many questions for me about, broadcasting in a big moment, maybe your best call ever at Trenton, and that a legacy that started somewhere else finds its way into your call. And that's what our show is about, is the sports legacy that's how they continue. And that's how they, tradition keeps going, is that found a way into your call. And it sounded so good, like you had rehearsed it 100 times, but yet it came from the heart. So yeah, that was awesome.
These iconic broadcasts that we listen to, the way he said, paved in gold. I mean, he just sunk into it. Love it.
There's that moment. It's the moment where Gabe Novak brings it back 102 yards and my voice cracks there's that moment when Hurley has the ball and gets it to Tolson. And Tolson finds, I don't know if it was Lynch, but when there's 5 seconds left and you're up by 2,
Yep.
and you get the ball away from them and you know you're going to win, and you spent the whole game saying, we can't win this game, we're too young. You know that it works with your hometown team. The moment that it goes from maybe to it's going to happen, that's where that emotion comes out in the call.
As we end the first part of this episode with Tom Johnson, we're going to leave it there where the road is black and gold. But there might be a little red paving, pirate red, in our next half of this episode, which will be released in the very early part of June. So join us then. I want to thank KTTN, and I want to thank all our listeners at Show Me Sports Legacies.